Today is the one-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub massacre, in which 49 people were murdered, their lives taken that night in a place where they had come to dance and come to feel safe, come to celebrate with their loved ones during Pride Month. This attack primarily targeted LGBTQ communities of color, specifically the Latinx community. Most of the victims were Latinx youth. A 2012 report on hate crimes against the gay community found that LGBTQ people of color are 1.82 times more likely to be physically assaulted. In 2012, 73.1% of the anti-LGBTQ homicide victims were people of color, 54% of them being Black, 15% of them being Latinx. We cannot overlook the fact that many of the victims were trans, the most vulnerable people in our community. This attack exists in a world where in 2016, advocates have tracked at least 22 murders across the United States, and in the few months of 2017, at least 12 trans people have been murdered. These numbers do not include the deaths of those who were not investigated, nor the victims who were misgendered by the police or media, or simply not given the right to be trans in death. We cannot overlook the identity of the shooter, despite being an American citizen and being raised in Western culture, has brought rise to anti-Muslim ideology and more overt hostility that has made life dangerous for many Muslim people who now also fear for their safety. We cannot separate this attack from the cultural construct of masculinity, particularly when it turns toxic. Masculinity, which has many problematic and truly damaging consequences. Toxic masculinity teaches that violence is the best way for men to prove their strength and power. It discourages them from releasing their feelings in other ways. The shooter's crime is most definitely tied to this sort of masculinity. The shooter's father spoke to the media, revealing that he was angered by the sight of two men kissing. Anti-gay crimes, like violence against women, are tied closely to this rigid and hierarchical idea about masculinity. We cannot separate this attack from the violent rhetoric that we have heard as a part of the current administration, where leaders regularly exploit intolerance, fear, and morality. We cannot overlook the plethora of anti-LGBTQ bills that have been proposed, nor the sharp spike of anti-LGBT hate crimes and the hate crimes towards other marginalized communities. We are being attacked legislatively, dehumanized, and made much easier targets for violence. We are a country founded on and fed by a strong historical current of patriarchy, white supremacy, systematic racism, misogyny, discrimination, and scapegoating, all of which in turn feeds fear, hatred, violence, and terror. This is part of who we are as a nation. We are not what we say. We are what we do, and we must aspire to do better.